I had just graduated from college and was strapped for cash, desperately needing a cheap place to stay. A friend mentioned there was an apartment for rent downtown, with a great price and seemingly nice landlords. It sounded like a dream come true, so I immediately contacted the landlords. The landlords were an elderly couple who warmly showed me around the apartment. It was on the top floor of an old building, not very big but just right for one person. They told me their son used to live there, but he had moved out, so they decided to rent it out. The place was a bit rundown but clean enough, and the rent was incredibly cheap. I quickly decided to take it. For the first few days after moving in, everything went smoothly. I was busy with work and getting used to my new environment, so I wasn't home much. But gradually, I started noticing strange things. Every time I came home, it felt like someone had been in my apartment. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, but the feeling kept getting stronger. One time, I found the kitchen utensils rearranged, even though I was sure I hadn't touched them. Another time, my notebook on the desk was open when I remembered closing it before leaving. I started suspecting that someone had been entering my apartment, but the door lock seemed untouched with no signs of forced entry. A few weeks later, I came home one evening feeling especially uneasy. I walked into the bedroom and saw that the bed covers had been rearranged, clearly not how I had left them. I began to think the landlords had a spare key and were checking in the apartment when I wasn't around. To confirm my suspicions, I decided to do a little experiment. Before leaving the house, I placed some items in specific positions and noted exactly where they were. That evening, when I returned, those items had definitely been moved. I was furious and decided to confront the landlords. The next day, I went to the landlord's place and casually asked if they had a spare key. They seemed surprised and firmly denied it, suggesting that I might be imagining things or remembering incorrectly. Their reaction, especially the wife's nervous demeanor, made me even more suspicious. Despite their denial, I didn't believe them. I decided to take matters into my own hands to protect my privacy. I went to a hardware store, bought a new lock, and replaced the old one myself. Now, only I had the key, and I thought this would stop anyone from getting into my apartment without my permission. However, the strange occurrences didn't stop after changing the lock. One night, while reading in bed, I suddenly heard faint footsteps coming from downstairs. The landlords lived right below me, and given their age, they shouldn't be up and about so late. I listened closely as the footsteps got closer and eventually stopped right outside my door. A chill ran down my spine. I decided to keep a low profile and continue observing for a few more days. One night, I woke up suddenly, feeling like someone was watching me. I opened my eyes and saw a blurry figure standing by my bed. My heart nearly stopped. The figure quickly retreated into the darkness and vanished outside the door. I jumped out of bed, rushed to the door, and found it lightly ajar. That night, I barely slept. I sat on the bed clutching a small knife, too scared to close my eyes. The next morning, I confronted the landlords about the incident, but they denied everything again, saying I must have been dreaming. My fear turned into anger, and I decided to take more drastic measures. I installed a small hidden camera on my bookshelf to catch any intruders. A few days later, I checked the footage and saw the landlords entering my apartment multiple times. They rummaged through my belongings, sat on my bed, and whispered to each other. I was disgusted and enraged by their audacity. I planned to call the police but wanted to gather more evidence first. A few nights later, I pretended to leave the apartment but snuck back in and hid in the closet. Sure enough, after a while, I heard the landlords unlocking my door with a spare key and entering my apartment. I recorded everything with my phone. The next day, I moved out of the apartment and handed the footage over to the police. The landlords were arrested and investigated. Finally, I was free from that nightmare. Looking back, I still feel a shiver down my spine. That period was not only physically exhausting but also mentally draining. This experience taught me to be extremely cautious when renting, ensuring my personal and property safety. 10 years have passed, and I now live in a new city with a stable job and life. In 2018, I moved to Atlanta to start a new life. To save money, I decided to share an apartment with others through an online rental platform. I found a reasonably priced 3-bedroom apartment and contacted the 2 current roommates. They seemed friendly and warmly showed me around the apartment. It was clean, tidy, and conveniently located. I thought it was a good choice, so I quickly moved in. At first, everything went smoothly. I was busy with my new job and was only home in the evenings and on weekends. My roommates also seemed busy, and although we didn't interact much, we got along quite well. However, a few weeks later, I started noticing some strange things. One night, I came home and noticed a strange smell in the kitchen. It smelled like some kind of chemical, with a sharp, pungent odor. I asked my roommates, but they all said they didn't smell anything. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, maybe the smell of some cleaning agent, but a sense of unease began to creep in. A few days later, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when one of my roommates joined me. We chatted for a bit, and then he suddenly offered to make me a special drink. Claiming it was a secret recipe, I found this a bit odd. But out of politeness, I agreed. He handed me a drink with a strange color. I smelled it and noticed a faint medicinal scent. I started to feel suspicious but forced a smile and set the drink on the table. Just then, the other roommate walked in, saw the drink in my hand, and his face turned pale. He quickly made an excuse to pull me aside and quietly told me not to drink it. He looked very nervous, which made me even more uneasy. That night, I pretended to drink some of the beverage, but actually didn't. I poured it down the sink and quietly washed the cup. Later, I told the other roommate what happened. He seemed surprised but didn't say much. That night, I lay in bed with my thoughts racing and cowled and fall asleep. I started to distrust my roommate's intentions and decided to stay vigilant. In the following days, I kept a closer eye on the roommate who had given me the drink. I noticed he often left late at night and returned looking anxious. A few times, I found some strange empty pill bottles in the trash, with labels I had never seen before. I started feeling scared and decided to take action to protect myself. I went to a pharmacy and bought a drug testing kit, keeping it in my room. One weekend night, I pretended to go out but actually stayed in my car outside the apartment, watching my roommate's movements. Late at night, I saw him sneak into my room and come out looking flustered. I quickly returned to my room and used the drug testing kit on my food and drinks, and sure enough, found something unusual. This time, I was certain my roommate was drugging me. I felt a mix of anger and fear and decided to call the police. I took the test results and the empty pill bottles from the trash to the police station and reported the situation. The police immediately launched an investigation and set up surveillance equipment in the apartment. A few days later, the police arrested my roommate. It turned out he had been buying illegal drugs online. The police found more drugs and some creepy planning documents in his room. During that period, I was extremely anxious. The roommate was sentenced, and we changed the locks on the apartment. The other roommate and I continued living there, and our relationship even improved. This experience taught me to be extra cautious when sharing a living space and to ensure my personal safety. Now, as it is, whenever I think back to that time, I still feel a chill, but am also more vigilant and aware of how to protect myself. The lesson, though painful, made me stronger and more cautious. After that time, I tried to avoid sharing apartments with strangers and preferred to spend more money renting a place on my own. Although the cost of living increased, I felt it was worth it because nothing is more important than safety. Whenever it's late at night, I still find myself double-checking the doors and windows. This experience not only changed my lifestyle, but also made me value trust and safety in relationships even more. In the summer of 2014, I had just embarked on my career and was experiencing the novelty of living alone in a new city. In search of a quiet and comfortable place to live, I found a charming Victorian house on an online rental platform in Denver, located in a serene neighborhood near downtown Denver. The house exuded historical charm and elegance as depicted in its photoshopped ceilings, intricate wooden decorations, and those old yet captivating stained glass windows. The landlord, Mr. Thompson, an elderly gentleman, warmly introduced me to the house's history, mentioning its origins dating back to the late 19th century as a family residence. After swiftly signing the lease, I moved in. The initial weeks were delightful, filled with the excitement of a new chapter in my life. However, as time progressed, I began to experience inexplicable occurrences. It all began with the dreams. Each nightfall, vivid dreams plagued me. In these dreams, I found myself wandering through the dimly lit corridors of the house, feeling a chilly breeze brushing against my cheeks, and sensing a faint dampness in the air accompanied by indistinct whispers. Upon waking from these dreams, a lingering unease always settled within me, which I initially attributed to work stress or my own overactive imagination. Yet, the dreams persisted and intensified. I started glimpsing shadowy figures in corners, seemingly human yet not quite, moving about the rooms when I was alone. At times, upon waking in my bed, I would sense someone walking in the room, though no tangible evidence could be found. These occurrences left me increasingly perplexed and fearful, worrying about my mental state. As time went on, I could no longer ignore these strange phenomena. One gloomy afternoon, I stumbled upon an old local newspaper tucked away on a bookshelf. The headline seized my attention like an electric shock. Denver Post, dated 1930, featuring an article titled "Unsolved Murder Mystery Haunts Denver." I began reading the detailed report, which recounted a gruesome murder that had taken place in the very house I now resided in decades ago. The victim, a young woman, had been brutally slain in the house's living room, and her killer had never been apprehended. According to the article, authorities had conducted numerous investigations into the case, but failed to uncover any substantial leads. The revelation sent shivers down my spine. Suddenly, everything dreams, the eerie sense of besegems to make sense. Perhaps these dreams were more than figments of my imagination. They might have been the echoes of that tragic event, or the house itself holding on to its dark memories. From that moment on, I viewed my experiences with a newfound perspective, respecting and acknowledging the historical weight that the house carried. Although the dreams occasionally still disturbed me, I learned to accept and understand them, recognizing the profound connection between the house and myself.